Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana, and we're here today with special guest, Dr. Robyn Koslowitz, who's here to share with us her new book, Post-Traumatic Parenting: Break the Cycle and Become the Parent You Always Wanted to Be. So are your childhood wounds shaping how you parent today, even without you realizing it? Dr. Robyn Koslowitz shares how trauma can silently influence parenting and how to break generational cycles with compassion, connection, and healing. Dr. Robyn Koslowitz has been a licensed child psychologist since 2017 and now houses her practice at the Center for Psychological Growth of New Jersey, which focuses on trauma-informed psychotherapy for children, adolescents, and families. She is the educational director of the Targeted Parenting Institute and hosts the popular Post-Traumatic Parenting podcast and YouTube channel. Dr. Koslowitz's work is regularly published in Psychology Today, and she's appeared on Fox, NPR, CNN, News Nation, and other national TV outlets. So welcome to the show, Dr. Robyn Koslowitz.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. I mean, what just a profound read. I'd love for you to share with us what inspired you to write Post-Traumatic Parenting.
So post-traumatic parenting is really all about my own journey. 26 years ago when I was pregnant and I knew I was becoming a mom and I knew I had PTSD, I knew that my damage would damage my baby and I was really worried about it. Like, what is it like? It's so uncomfortable to be me in my own body. What would it be like to be a developing fetus in my body? What's it like to be a toddler if your mom is having panic attacks? And I just had this instinct that my damage was going to damage them unless I did something about it. So I just started doing the research because I was a graduate student and there was nothing, like crickets. This was like pre-searching things on Google. So I went to the stacks at Bope's Library at NYU and just looked for research on the effects of PTSD on motherhood, and there was nothing there. And that became my program of research, and that became my clinical interest. It really was the idea of like, all research is me search. I wanted to figure this out for myself, and then all the other people who said, hey, me too.
I'm so glad that you wrote this book. It's such an important topic. So many people today are walking around with their baggage of trauma. So when we talk about post-traumatic parenting, what does that look like?
So I think really people misunderstand trauma. They think trauma is like those ripped from the headlines kind of like, I was in a fire or a car crash or a shooting, right? But really, trauma is any instance where your whole brain and body felt overwhelmed by what just happened. It can be something like bullying. It can be something like growing up in a family where there was so much economic stress that your parents had no emotional space to parent you, so they missed things. It's not always like the guy with the gun, right, screaming your money or your life. That's traumatic too. But there are so many instances of trauma that people don't see as necessarily traumatic, but they leave an invisible effect on us that I call the trauma app in our brain that teaches us something about the world, but it's kind of true, but it's very, very exaggerated. So that's how I look at trauma, like anything that overwhelmed you and made you doubt your ability to navigate the world or was just too big for you to metabolize. And then you grow up and then you become an adult and then you have to parent and suddenly the trauma just doesn't allow you to be the person you want to be.
That's such an important piece. In your book, you describe trauma as something that doesn't just affect us, but can shape the way we parent. How does trauma silently show up in everyday parenting moments?
So I look at trauma as our adaptation to trauma. I see it as a trauma app in our brain. And what happens is just like an app on your phone that sort of does what you want until it's completely misunderstanding you and doing what it wants to do, right? Like when Waze is directing you onto a highway that doesn't exist, right? Because its programming says that there's a highway there. It's trying to help you, but it doesn't know the full reality of your life, right? So the trauma app is doing the same thing. It was developed in a moment of trauma And it gives you this very simple algorithmic rule. If X happens, do Y. If people are stressed out, people please them. If people are angry, yell back and don't ever get pushed around. If a situation seems stressful, run away from it, dissociate, right? All of those are trauma app adaptations. And in the moment of trauma, they might have worked, right? Someone's being raised by a parent who, let's say, is very harsh and critical. So people pleasing is a really smart thing to do if you're 11 years old and you know that if you don't people please, your stepdad is just going to tear you to shreds and maybe even get physical. People pleasing is really smart. The problem is you become an adult and you become a parent and your 4-year-old doesn't want to wear his shoes or brush his teeth, or your 11-year-old wants to watch a movie that you don't think is appropriate. And your trauma app says, people please. And then you're like, what did I just do? I was going to hold firm. I know that horror movies are way too aggravating for her and she ends up with nightmares for weeks. Why did I say yes when I meant to say no? And that's because your trauma app said, upset person, make them happy. And you're not actually parenting in that moment. You're running a script and a program that you really don't want to be running anymore. And you might not even realize that ever in your life until you're parenting and suddenly you go, wait, how did I yell? I didn't mean to yell. Why did I do that? Probably it was your trauma app.
Mm-mm-mm. Is that what they call in some ways like generational trauma? Because we could say, oh, that's how my parents used to act or my grandparents used to act.
Yeah, sometimes we think of it as like parental ventriloquism, right? Like, is that me yelling? That sounded exactly like my mother, right? And it's like, to a certain extent, we learn how to cope with stress and upsetting situations from our parents. Like, it might not even occur to us that there's any other way. I remember talking to a family. This was like a military family, and the mom really no longer believed in physical discipline. She did not want to. She did not want to spank, and her husband kept insisting on like sort of this spear the rod, spoil the child approach. And when we sat down and boiled it down, and I said to the husband, this is really difficult for your wife. It's not working with your kids. Like they're shutting down instead of changing their behavior. And when I really boiled it down with him, he's like, well, but then what else do you do? Like besides spank, how else can you get a kid to do what you want them to do? And I'm like, oh, that's just a skill that you don't have. If I told you that there was another option, that there was a way to get your kid to do what you wanted them to do and it wouldn't involve spanking them, would you agree to try that? And it didn't even occur to him that there was any other way. He thought that not spanking them meant that they're just going to get to do whatever they want, and that would be complete chaos. And how would he be a responsible parent then? It didn't occur to him that, but what if there's another option? Because in his mind, you get mad at your kid, you spank them. That is the only way because that's what he saw. So yeah, that's generational trauma in an extent that maybe there's so many other options that it didn't even occur to you are options.
And that's really interesting. They're just going based off of what they've learned.
Yeah, I always come into any situation thinking when humans know what to do, they do well, right? When humans know better, they do better. As opposed to having that assumption that this guy is just an angry my way or the highway kind of guy and looking at him in that way, more looking at him as like the scared little boy underneath that says, but then how do I teach my kids what to do? Because that's a skill. No problem. I can teach you a skill. I didn't always know how to swim. Someone taught me how to swim. I didn't always know how to ride a bike. Someone taught me how to do that. I can teach you how to help your kids behave without using spanking if that's the skill you want to learn.
That's so empowering. It's like, hey, we've got a new way of doing things.
Yeah, pretty much anything in life boils down to a skill that you can then learn if someone breaks it down into the component parts. Now, sometimes it's not a skill you want to or need to learn, right? There are skills in this world that I can look at and say, I could probably learn how to do that, but I don't need to. Parenting, though, is one of the skills that you don't have an option because you do need to parent them. You do owe them that, right? That I need to parent you as well as I can. Everything else, it's like, yeah, I don't have the skill of driving a 18-wheel rig truck. It's a skill. If I wanted to, I could probably learn. Don't need that skill, though. Parenting, though, is not optional.
I like how your book really outlines different trauma-driven parenting types. And you talk about entangled parent and the perfectionist parent. Which one do most parents unknowingly fall into?
So I think it's not most parents. I think these are the 5 types that over the years, over 20 years of doing these classes and working with people, I keep hearing themes. And I'm like, looking at a person, I say, oh, you're a disengaged parent. Oh, you're a perfectionist parent. Oh, you're paralyzed. It's just so predictable that based on certain types of upbringings, and that's what we have in the book. We have all these like journaling exercises where you can figure out which type you are. Oh, whenever you don't know what to do with your kids, you run away and dissociate and give that job to someone else. You're disengaged. That means that you're so afraid that your damage will damage your kids, that your rough edges will harm them. So you keep maybe drinking to take the edge off because you're so afraid. Okay, I bet I can figure out what kind of a childhood you had based on that, or what kind of an adulthood you had, what kind of recent experiences you had based on that. And the same thing with the perfectionist parent. You really think you need to do parenting perfectly because it will be awful if you don't. That tells me something about just how afraid you are of the traumatic experiences you had. And we can sort of go through each type, and then it's a matter of undoing that trauma at default. And what I always say is you only know what your trauma at default is very often in parenting, because in other relationships in life, people will sort of make space for you to be the way you are. If you're more of a perfectionist, people are like, oh, that's her. She's a perfectionist. She's very detail oriented. These are the kind of jobs we'll give her in our office, and these are the kind of jobs we won't give her. Oh, this is her. She tends to stress out when she's given, disengage and like sort of run away when she's given too much stress. So here's what we're going to, give her. Here's what we're not going to give her. Right. And people will do that. Your friends will do that. Sometimes your spouse will do that. Your kids won't do that. And that's so good, because what I always say is, people talk about triggers and like, what's wrong with me that my kid could trigger me so much? And it's like, your child is not triggering you. Your child is revealing your triggers. And it's a very important mindset shift. And here's the most important part is we have to reveal it to heal it. If I don't know what your triggers are, I can't help you. So when your child triggers you, great. That tells me something. This type of situation triggers you. Let's figure out why. And then we can heal it not only for your parenting and for your kid, but for your whole entire life. This is the opportunity to actually heal your trauma.
What is R2 parenting?
So many post-traumatic parents really lack discernment, right? Like they really don't know what they know. They don't know what they believe about their parenting. And what tends to happen is nowadays, especially on social media, there are so many strong voices about parenting. You'll look at certain corners of the internet where it'll say things like, if you use a sticker chart, you are abusing your children. If you don't co-sleep with your kid till they're 4, you're going to harm their attachment. Let's not even forget like not baby wearing or putting your kids into daycare. And they make it sound like it's sort of like a dose specific thing. The minute you put your kid in daycare, you have ruined them forever. And that's just not realistic to how most people parent or are able to parent. Like that's great for that researcher who perhaps is parenting one kid in a very privileged, financially can afford to do that. But what about a parent who's got a whole bunch of kids and there's not enough money in the household and her kids have to go to daycare? Does that really mean their attachment is ruined forever, right? Or that sticker charts are abusive, really? Like giving your kid a sticker every time they brush their teeth to instill the habit of brushing their teeth, is that really abusive? And parents really doubt themselves, especially if they're a post-traumatic parent and they kind of say, I know what not to do, like everything that was done to me, I don't know what to actually do. So if you boil down parenting, it really comes down to 2 parts of the equation. There's responsiveness, which is all about being kind and understanding and validating with a kid. And then there's being responsible. It's my job to teach the child how to navigate the world because I'm older. I know more. I have fully developed frontal lobes. The executive planning part of my brain understands the world much better. I know what's likely to happen. Like, so to give like that example, your 3-year-old does not want to put on his sneakers in the morning. You can be responsive and say, yuck, you don't like how your sneakers feel. You really don't want to put them on right now. And then me as a responsible mom can also say, It's 100 degrees outside. The pavement is hot. Your feet will get burned. I know this because I've been in the world longer than 3 years. There's no magical solution where somehow you can go outside and not get burned and, not wear your sneakers. I guess I can carry you, but that won't do very well, right? With my back will eventually give out. So what are we going to do? Yeah, yucky. You don't want to wear your sneakers. And you're going to wear your sneakers. Now, I can use all sorts of techniques. I can, offer him a choice between the blue sneakers and the red sneakers. There's lots of ways we can talk to kids. But at the same token, it's my job as the responsible adult to get those sneakers onto his feet. And it's the same thing with screen time limits or healthy food or bedtime, right? I am not being this coercive, disciplinarian, mean adult when I am demanding certain behaviors of my kid. But at the same token, I can do that in a gentle, responsive, kind way. It's not either or, like you're either a gentle parent or you're using any sort of positive disciplinary techniques or anything like that. It's a both and. So it's like a seesaw. We want to balance between responsive, responsible, responsive, responsible. But the internet makes it seem like you got to pick one camp or the other, and that's just not true.
So, can our trauma be transformed into a superpower?
Yeah, that's how I look at trauma. That really what trauma is this, you have this app in your brain and it's eating up all your psychological resources. It's like, imagine like an app on your phone that's just draining your battery power. And you're like, my phone was just fully charged half an hour ago. What's going on here? And that app keeps turning itself on. If you deselect permissions from your trauma app, and like I said, parenting can really help you do that, then what happens, what's left are those resources that you can then use as a superpower. So think about that people pleaser. Probably very good at reading people and understanding the unspoken in a room. If you can stop people pleasing, but still use that insight that you have such a superpower. If you're one of those perfectionist parents and you're always like, what if, sounds like you're very good at problem solving in advance. Like your contingency plans have contingency plans. This is a good thing when we remove all that emotional energy around just running around in circles being so worried about it all the time. Take away those permissions and then proactively plan for what might happen in the future because that's your superpower. You're good at that. Me, I was a disengaged parent for a very long time. And that was, in a way, I have this superpower. I can really concentrate and get into a flow state and like write and be creative to an extent that I can block the world out. I literally wrote my dissertation as a working mom on the bus from New Jersey to New York. There could be a drunk guy asleep on my shoulder, drooling all over me, and I am in the zone typing. And that is great for trying to do focused work. Not so great when your 11-year-old wants to have a conversation with you, right? That doesn't work so well there. But if I can deselect permissions from the trauma app and when I want to be present with my kids, be totally focused on them, that's quite a superpower.
That is a superpower, being able to have that type of focus and be that present.
Yeah.
One of the things you talk about in your book is self-forgiveness. So what role does this play in post-traumatic parenting?
So it's post-traumatic parenting. I love what you're like asking about because self-forgiveness is such an important theme. It's post-traumatic parenting, but it's also in all post-traumatic living. Shame is that sensation that there's something globally wrong with me. And when we feel that sense of shame, we really run away from it. And we really look at it as like, I don't even want to think about what went wrong. I'm just a bad person. We can't do that. We have to look at shame as, instead of shame, we have to look at it as guilt, right? I did something wrong. It is true. I messed up. What have I learned from that situation that I can now capitalize on? So if I feel this sense of shame, like I yelled at my kid, how could I have done that? I'm the worst mother in the world. I'm terrible. This is the worst thing ever. I'm never going to be able to sit down and critically analyze that situation and say, what were the factors that led to me yelling? And what can I troubleshoot? And how can I change the day so that I don't yell? So the only way I can ever do that is if I forgive myself and I say, I'm human. Humans will sometimes mess up. That's okay. I'm going to try again, especially when I know that in parenting, especially, it's not the rupture, it's the repair, right? So yeah, I messed up. I yelled at my kid. That was a rupture. Our relationship for a minute got a little ripped, right? But if I knot that relationship, think of a thread. Thread is pretty easy to snap. It's pretty weak. Piece of dental floss, pretty easy to snap. If I keep knotting that dental floss, it gets stronger and stronger until it's so strong it's as strong as a rope, and then it can't be easily torn aside. Tiny little rip in a relationship that I then knot back together becomes a stronger relationship, right? So if my shame makes me run away from even talking about it with my kid, even talking about it with myself and thinking it through, talking about it with a therapist, journaling about it, right? Thinking it through, then I'll never learn from it. So the first step is forgiving ourselves for being human. Then we can say, okay, I made a mistake. Not the end of the world. I'm going to learn from that mistake. Boy, do we get stronger, and boy, does that relationship get stronger.
For parents that have felt that they've really messed up, how can they start to become the parent that they want to be?
So it really does start. I always say it's never too late, right? That's a horrible feeling, like I messed up. At the same token, even if your kids are in their 30s, it's never too late to repair. It's never too late to sit down and say, if I had a time machine, I'd go back and do this completely differently. Tell me what that was like for you. What would we need to do to fix it now? You know how many people come to me and they'll say, it's too late. And sometimes someone's a mother of a 3-year-old. Like, it's too late. I've ruined attachment. Sometimes it's a mother of a 7-year-old. Sometimes it's a mother of a 15-year-old or a 23-year-old. And I look at the mother of the 23-year-old and I say, like, there was a mother of a 3-year-old who said that. Everybody has that sensation at some point when we realize, like, that the task feels big and it's something we don't know how to do. Like that military dad that I was talking about at the beginning, where it's like, it's not that it's too late. It's that I don't know how to do this. Okay. That's why we have a book where there's all these things you can learn. Like I said, everything's a skill and every skill can be learned. So it's simply a matter of learning that skill, which you can. I once heard this like really nice line that shame stands for should have already mastered everything, right? And you haven't mastered everything. That's okay. As long as you're willing to learn the skill, it's really not too late. I just had this beautiful feedback from someone who is a grandma now. Her kids are grown, and she bought the book for her daughter to use with her own children, but they ended up sitting down and repairing their relationship about things that happened when she was raising her now adult daughter. And she said, I didn't think that I was post-traumatic parenting now. My daughter's in her 30s, but she totally was.
Are you seeing people use this book to really heal their inner child and start that journey of really working through their own trauma?
Absolutely. And I think that inner child is, really just a metaphor for like earlier versions of ourself that are stored in our brain, particularly in our trauma app, because something crucial happened at that moment of our development. The really interesting research came out actually after I already handed the final draft of the book into the publisher that showed that when a woman in particular becomes a mother, and as her children are growing, her brain is extremely neuroplastic, meaning the brain is very capable of being rewired. It's a unique moment of neural reorganization that the last time you had that you were a small child, that your brain is just willing to make new connections and learn because, of course, it's a survival thing. Like, I need to keep this baby alive. I need to learn all these skills to keep this baby alive. So your brain is uniquely neuroplastic as you're parenting. So it's the perfect time to rewire your trauma app and to reprocess the traumas that happen to you because your brain wants to do that already. And I always say that, your inner child can't raise a child. And a lot of times when we're disproportionately mad at our kids or disproportionately, frustrated or even sometimes jealous, like, look at this kid. This kid has this childhood that I could have only dreamt of. A lot of times that's our inner child. And sometimes when we say no to our kids or sometimes when we snap at them, really it's our inner child getting so mad at our kid. But your inner child can't parent your child. But in parenting your real world child, you actually can heal your inner child. And in the book, I have specific journaling prompts and meditations that people can do where you sort of direct your inner child's attention to something you're giving your child now. So you might have something like, say something like, inner child, right now, our real world child is upset because I've asked them to do their chores. and you had to like run a home because we didn't have parents growing up. And when you're watching me compassionately talk our child through the skill of how to clean up their room, you're going to feel really jealous and really sad and really angry. I want you to participate in this from the standpoint of the giver, right? Because now we're giving this to our real world child and you're going to heal. I want you to pay attention to me doing this. You're feeling me love our child and you're going to feel that love. And the inner child really responds to that in a way that other inner child meditations that just talk to the inner child don't do as well, because it's an actual concrete doing. As I hug our real world child and comfort him during a nightmare, you're going to feel what it feels like to be hugged in the middle of the night by a caring parent. And that can really reprocess old traumas, particularly traumas around things that not what happened to us, but what didn't happen for us.
My goodness, you are such an inspiration, and your book, Post-Traumatic Parenting, is such a great book. Where can our listeners connect with you, Dr. Robyn, and be part of your community and learn more about your work?
So there's really a lot of ways to connect with me. The book is Post-Traumatic Parenting, which is available wherever you get books. The website is posttraumaticparenting.com. I also have a YouTube channel and a podcast that are both post-traumatic parenting. But if people want more, interactive time with me, I am on Instagram at Dr. Koslowitz Psychology. And that's really where the post-traumatic parenting community hangs out. And that's where you can find, those conversations. And I do respond to DMs and comments on posts. And that's where people can really ask their questions and get an answer and, really interact. And the post-traumatic parenting community really were the inspiration for this book, like the people who took the parenting classes and who asked their questions over the years, because I always wanted to, if there was even one mom who felt as alone and terrified and scared to parent and sure that her damage would damage her kid as I did when I got pregnant, I want that mom. And of course, there are so many more than that one mom, right? I want that person to feel the support I would have needed back then.
Well, Dr. Koslowitz, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you so much for having me and giving me the opportunity to talk about this topic that I'm so passionate about.
Well, thank you, Dr. Koslowitz. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Post-Traumatic Parenting. Break the cycle and become the parent you always wanted to be. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Mary Ann, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Mary Ann is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Mary Ann will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmaryann.com for more information.